We started today a new simon. We're starting simon Lamed Ches, which is Halochos Pas Akum. The laws of pas is bread and things that are cooked by a goy, v'cholav oivdik achavim, and milk that a goy milked the cow. Ubayt as I see, it says as follows. Omer Chacham, the Chacham said, it's a whole Gemara, whole Sugya, Masechta B'Yizara, Pasha oivdik achavim, also Pasha, also Chacham lecha Pasha oivdik achavim. The Chachamim asked to eat the bread that was baked by a goy. The Yesh Mekayim is Shemekilin, and there's places that they're Mekel, and V'loichim pas minachtum oivdik achavim. But Mokum Shein Nachtum Shel Yisrael. Where there isn't any other bread, they have nothing else, and bread is a staple item, food item. Lechem u'vaven is Yisoid. So they make it to take pas from a Nachtum, from a Goyish bakery. This is what we call, in Shulchan Aruch, we have two madregas. One madrega is called Pas Akum, and one madrega is called Pas Palta. Pas Akum means bread that a goy baked privately for himself, that he baked in his house. Pas Palta means a bakery. A goy has a bakery, so the bakery is not baked privately. There's what's the reason behind this? So the Gemara says that Gazu al piton mishum b'noisum. They were geyser mishum al piton on their bread, mishum b'noisum because of the daughters. They didn't want that there should be a connection and a real friendship between the Yidden with the Goyim. You have to keep a certain distance, and if you wouldn't keep this distance, so the mechas v'shalom be intermarriage. So therefore they were geyser, don't eat their bread. Now, there is another reason, which is not the main reason. There's also another reason that has to do with kashrus. Because it's known that when you have to bake bread, you don't want the bread to burn, to stick to the pan or the oven. So you have to smear some fat over there, some oil. And many people used to use what's called lard. Lard is chazer fat. So that's another reason. But the main reason was mishum chasnas. So the halacha, the Be'er Heitev in Shulchan Aruch has an interesting shaila. Vi is l'moshel, are you allowed to, what if a bread that was baked by a galach? What's the shaila bread that's baked by a galach? Officially, the galach has no children. And Vivaldi has no children, so there's no one to marry. So the question was, could you eat his bread? So they say, no, that we didn't make any chiluk. Once they made the gezerah of Akum, it remained Akum. There's also a shaila. Is it also applied to a Mechal Shabbos, or to apply to a Yid who has never geshmat? Many want to say that it doesn't apply to a geshmat Yid, because a geshmat Yid really doesn't become a goy. He may act like a goy, and he thinks he's a goy, but he doesn't really become a goy, the shmat. And B'meila, if he has a daughter, and he was married to a Jewish wife, the daughter is a Yiddish maidel. So it's no shayla. On a Mechal Shabbos, there's also a shayla if we're machma on Mechal Shabbos or not, for the same reason, because mishum chasnas, and if it's mishum chasnas, so what's the problem if the father's a Mechal Shabbos? You're allowed to get married to a daughter of a Mechal Shabbos. That's the popular opinions. There are some that are machmir, that they hold that a Mechal Shabbos is mamash like a guy, and the Gezeit applies that it should stay away from. But we don't paskin that way, especially today. There's a popular heta that's used when they get to Mechal Shabbos that the Mechal Shabbos of today are not really Mechal Shabbos, not real Mechal Shabbos. Why they're not real Mechal Shabbos? Because we say that they raised between Goyim. And maybe God were raised between Goyim. That's why they don't know about Shabbos. And some want to say that when is a Mechal Shabbos, have the din of a Mechal Shabbos, if he's Mechal Shabbos in front of a Sora Yidden. So, and the Sora Yidden have to be Shomer Shabbos. Otherwise, he's not considered. It doesn't have the din of a Mechal Shabbos. So, you have to have all these hatadim are used for hatadim to be mata a Mechal Shabbos.
That's in regard to the Pas Akum, but what about kashrus?
It's a different thing. We're talking. What the Shulchan Aruch now that we're learning doesn't talk. I said that there's a svara mitzat kashrus. But the Ikka Gezeidah was Mishum Chasnas, not Mishat Kashrus. So if you know that that there's no problem with Kashrus, then Apidin, many people are Mekel. Some people are still Machmir, but many people are Mekel.
Mitzat Kashrus is not only Pas. Mitzat Kashrus is anything.
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's a.
Why Pas beside the marriage?
Huh?
Why
Because
not other foods? Why not a
because Pas is a thing. It's a staple food item, and we have a rule in the Gemara that what brings people together is in English they're called breaking bread. When you go out, you invite someone, let's go break bread. We call, if you want to come to Lashon break bread, from the Lashon...
B'tzias hapas. B'tzias hapas.
B'tzias hapas, or Pruso, is a pizza. So from them come to the whole idea.
So that's why a nachtim there's no chash.
Huh?
A nachtim.
Oh, a nachtaim, they want to say,
We make
you don't have so much, when you come to the guy's house and he baked it in the house, some want to say that today, that Bisman is there. Over here, when we're talking about nachtam, in Shulchan Aruch, they weren't talking about what they used to have, was say Levi's bread.
National bakery.
They're talking in the shtetl. People live in a small shtetl, so there's a chiluk between what the guy baked in his house, and if the guy has a bakery, so he didn't bake it for you, Dafka. But they want to say, oh, but still you know the guy. So there is a little kesher that you know the guy. If you go into the bakery and buy, they used to be like Levi's bread or Stuma's bread. It's a big company that bakes tens of thousands of pounds a day. You have no shackles with the guy whatsoever. So they want to say that that's a third level even to be makel. We'll continue innovating. He says, Oya filu yesh. He said that there's some people that are makel when there's no other bread. So the emes is, you say there's no other bread essence, but some people have a problem. They don't know what a meal is not a meal without a piece of bread. Today is a little bit different maybe, but a mole is I remember I once asked Dr. Zellickson, why didn't they have all the sicknesses that they have today? Why didn't they have it a mole? So he said to me, a mole, am gegessen a Stickel Brot, is es gewesen a gesunde Stickel Brot. Today, they take out all the good things from the bread, and the bread that they're paying, they're selling is like paper. Marshall, there's an item in the wheat called wheat germ. Wheat germ is an important ingredient, but today they take it out from the wheat and they sell separate wheat germ. So the bread that you're eating doesn't really have the real value of a healthy piece of bread.
Like the eggs, the ganze Masse.
If the reason you just chasne,
A what?
the Pas Yisrael, just chasne the reason for Pas Yisrael just shlo yivol the chasne.
Chasnas, yeah.
Okay, why not say in Tshuva he said as you have to be makpid.
Does state that a filler, someone that's making a whole year, should take on themselves certain chumras that are Shemay Tshuva. It's a different thing.
Different Indian.
Yeah, it's a different. That's a like be machmer a whole year. It's difficult for you to be machmer, so to be. I remember we're going to learn later about Chol Yisrael. You know, there's people who tell you stories that when they go someplace on shlichus, they go to a farm and they have to stay there, and it's a whole malacha. So there's a Mogaven a chassid that his name was Rabbi Avram Elia Akselrad. Rabbi Avram Elia Akselrad was a Tamim from Temchet Tamimim, and he was a Rav in Baltimore. So he sometimes he would come to over here to what do you call it, to New York. He came to New York for Breton as of for Brengen. That was I'm talking now. It's before my times. I'm talking like in the early 1940s when he came to. Yeah. So he at the Mofa Bracht, and I read about the gracekeit from an American bacher that told him that he's out of town someplace running a yeshiva, and he goes, it was 2 hours to get Chol Yisrael. So that, that the gracekeit from Tamimim meint to get Zeit in the Chais. So he kept emphasizing and talking. Then he said, was er a gracekeit is das? He said, when I said, talking Chol Yisrael, trink me nicht in Milch. You know what I mean? That's a different type of people. God is speaking about it, about Ramel Yaksua, I just reminded myself. Today is a Shag's Yortzeit, so I'll tell you an interesting story. I told Shabbos, I told a story, but I'll tell you another story now. The Rashag used to travel out of town. How did it work? I explained Shabbos that Rabbi Katz, there was a Yid Moshe Pinchas Katz, the Gabbai, after the Rashag got the mail, he'd give the mail to Katz. Katz already, the Rashag would open to see if a big check came in the mail, Didn't pay much attention to it. But Katz already, he studied the mail. And he had a little book where he used to write the names of the people that contributed. And these people, he would later told the Rashag, someone sent in $100. I mean, $100 was a big mitzvah, in 1940, 1950. And the Rashag would visit this is how they got people. He also had lists of states, where he had in the states, he had people that came, so and it would compile a list of a few people that it's worth to make a trip to that state. So he would give it to the Rashag, and the Rashag would plan a trip out of town. When he went out of town, many times he took Rabbi Weinberg with him, but there were many times also that he took me with him. One of the places that I traveled with him, traveled many different places. One place was Baltimore. We had a list of some people in Baltimore, but the Rashag said to me, before we go visit the people, Lam again stood of David Patashnik. Who is a David Patashnik? I don't know if any of you heard the name even, but he's the grandfather of Castriel Castel. Castriel Castel, he had a grandfather from one side was a Rabbi Castel, that was a Rebbe in Lubavitch Yeshiva in Bedford and Dean, and he was a Choshev, a Yid, a Slanim Mechasad. There was a time when he was signing on the smichas for the 770 Bochum, and he had another grandfather, Reb David Patashnik, who lived in Baltimore. This Reb David Patashnik was You see, there's the luach on the wall here from the Kail Chabad. In the early years, maybe Hirschel maybe remembers, in the early years, over here on the luach, in the middle, there's 3 letters there. From the Alter Rebbe, from the Friedrich Rebbe, from the Rebbe. In that box where they have these letters, they used to have listed the Gaboyim for Kail Chabad. And the Gaboyim in different countries and different states, there were Gaboyim. And David Patashnik was one of the Gaboyim that were listed there. So when we went to visit this David Patashnik, and he told the Ashaga a story about Avram Elia Raksel, but he was his Rav. So the story went like this. The Friedrich Rebbe in 1930 visited Baltimore. And when he visited Baltimore, so there was a Baal Bos from the shul came to the Rebbe with a complaint against the Rav, their Rav, this Avram Elia. What was the complaint against this Avram Elia? The complaint was, number one, that he doesn't wear a tie. Okay, that was number one. Number two, the complaint was that he doesn't want to go up on the bimah to give a drasha. He is the shul that he was the Rav in Baltimore was built like over here, and on the side here you have it in many shuls. On the side, this goes in on the side, and there's the Rav sits in the winkel over there, and the president, let's say, sits in the other winkel, and he didn't want to go up. And then when it comes to give the drasha, so the Rav would go up to the bimah, and he'd give the drasha from over here, from the podium, so to say. See, it was a taina that he had to the Rav. Rabbi Avram Elia wanted to give his drasha with dafka from his stender down over here. So the Friedrich Rebbe said to this Baal Bos, I'll look into it. Like, I don't know the exact word, but something like, I'll look into it. Then later, at Zeitspäter, the Friedrich Rebbe was again in Baltimore, and the Yid came again, the president came again to the Rebbe to complain. He says, the Rebbe, et ongeton a schnips. What was the schnips? The schnips was a black bundle with a string, not the type of tie that we have today, you know. Of after bimah willen it arifkein. And he said to the was hat der Meure, als eine Keve et a Kupton? So the Friedrich Rebbe didn't like that expression, and he said to the Yid, ausgerechnet, he said, Jacobson, Simpson, maybe someone else, then alle meine Talmidim, aber Avram Elia is Oila Gabeim. That's, you know who we're talking about. Okay, so we'll go right over here. He says, he said that there were people that were makel, that they took a pass that wasn't, was a pass shalnachtumes, a pass palta, but avo bepasha balabatim avikachavim lahoyim mekilim af b'shasat chak. That's even b'shasat chak. They weren't makel to take a bread that a guy baked in his house for himself, to come to him and take a piece of that bread. Umishu b'derech, someone is on the road. Im yachol lahasik pas kosher, if he is able to get kosher pas yisrael, tzorach hamtim ad pasa. So he has to wait till a pasa. In other words, if it means to go a pasa is like about 2.5 miles approximately. Boy mikra, it's what's called pas bar abayis. Boy mikra pas bar abayis ella im osol b'shvil b'nei beisay. If he made it for himself, avlim osol limkar. If he made it to sell, it doesn't mikri nachtem. That's what's called pas palta. So I'm telling you, so like I told you before, that was in the shtetl. They knew that the guy is the baker. Today, it's a step, and not I'm telling anyone to rely on that, But if you know people that are, many Yidden are buying it, so they're relying on this heter that isn't even paspalta. It's a medrega less. Apa pishein dakavika. V'chein nachtem she'asol l'bnei beisai mikra balabayis. V'yesh mi she'ayme, and there's an opinion that says that the v'mokem she'ein nachtem motzu mutafil b'pashel balabayis. V'ein etzarech hakdem al pas kosher and v'chein noigen. You see, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch was got an Ungarish Yid, a Deutsche Ungarish Yid, and he's making on this. Of the Welt, the Frumme Welt doesn't accept this heter. The Frumme Welt holds that you're not allowed to take not the lowest level of paspalta, not the regular paspalta, and especially not Pas Akum. And additional reason besides chasnas is because there may be a problem also with kashrus. Derech Agav, one of the things that that there were guys in mishum chasnas was also wine. We have what they call stam yayin and yayin nesach. Yayin nesach means wine. Apidin, what it means, yayin nesach means wine that was poured on an avodah zarah. That's a good gosan. And then the stam yayin means wine that was handled by a guy. In the Haggadah Shel Pesach, there's certain pieces in the Haggadah where we say it, and certain places we uncover the matzah, and certain places we cover back the matzah, and we pick up the kais. One of the places where we pick up the kais is by V'hisha Amda. V'hisha Amda, you pick up the kais and mazinkt up in the different nigunim, Ravitch nigun for V'hisha Amda, other nigunim. The question is, why do you have to pick up the kais by V'hisha Amda? When you say, Marshal, halach ma'anya, okay, so you want to show the matzah. When you say matzah zushon leichem, you want to touch the matzah or pick up the matzah. But what's the shachas of V'hisha Amda to pick up the kais dafka? So I have in my house, I have a number of Aggadas. Everybody has a collection of Aggadas. I have a Aggadah that was made by a Rav in Washington in 1925. His name was Silverstein. He made a number of Sorim. He says an interesting thought. He says, why do we pick up the kais? Because the question is, what is V'hisha Amda? There's different pshatim in the V'hisha Amda. Some say it goes on under the Chush Gadol. The Sheit of Rachel Yes B'Chush Gadol, then go V'hisha Amda. So some connected that thanks to the Chush Gadol, we managed, because whenever we need it, we bribed the Goyim. So that's what helped the Yidden in Golos. But he teaches over there, V'hisha Amda, this kais is Sha'amda Leinu, that the fact that we didn't drink wine together, we didn't touch wine that they touched, that kept us separated from them, and b'meila, so we didn't mix with them, and therefore, even though but we still existed, all thanks to this kais that kept us separated from them.
When the Futter says saying the Chayim,
No, it's a different.